In the UK, a Conservative MP at the heart of a row over standards in public life has resigned. Owen Paterson was found to have broken lobbying rules. The government then tried to alter the way such scrutiny is carried out, prompting a backlash. With millions trapped in an escalating conflict in Ethiopia, a diplomatic effort is underway to defuse the war there. A US envoy is in the capital, and the EU and regional groups are calling for a ceasefire. At the Glasgow Climate Summit, COP26, more than 40 countries have promised to phase out coal power, but China, India and the US have not signed up. And controversial rules to push tens of millions of American workers into getting vaccinated will come into effect from January. The mandates affect all healthcare workers and businesses with more than 100 employees.
We start with the coronavirus situation here in Japan, where new cases are falling and restrictions are easing. Now, people around the nation are resuming all kinds of activities. Authorities across Japan reported 158 new infections on Thursday. 14 were in Tokyo. The tally in the capital has been under 30 for the past 8 days. The western city of Saga is hosting a hot air balloon festival for the first time in 2 years. Balloonists usually come from Japan and abroad. This time, they're all from Japan, and no spectators are allowed at the main venue.
Lots of people waved to me while I was flying. I hope people have a good time.
Starting this month, J-League pro soccer clubs are allowed to fill their stadiums to half their capacity. About 14,000 tickets were sold for a match at this stadium in Kobe on Wednesday. Some were part of a trial package for people who were vaccinated against COVID-19 or tested negative. Now that Japan is stepping up economic activity, a business leader is urging the government to ease controls at the border.
We should restart domestic and international travel. Of course, that's with thorough steps taken to prevent infections.
People arriving in Japan have to quarantine for 10 days. The government plans to cut that to 3 days for most vaccinated people who come on business. Now, the World Health Organization has announced it added a vaccine developed in India to its emergency use list after confirming the shot's efficacy and safety. Covaxin was developed by the Indian firm Bharat Biotech. The WHO says the jab was found to have a 78% efficacy rate in preventing severe illness 14 or more days after the second shot. It adds the vaccine is suitable for use in developing countries as it can be stored in normal refrigerators. India's External Affairs Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar welcomed the move. He said the decision facilitates travel for many Indian citizens and contributes to vaccine equity. The latest move means the inoculation can be provided to developing nations through the UN-backed COVAX program for fair vaccine distribution. The COVAX facility was expected to distribute 2 billion vaccine doses within this year, but only 435 million shots have been provided so far as infections spiked across the globe and developed countries have been slow in providing funding and doses. The WHO has so far granted emergency use approval to vaccines developed by Pfizer-BioNTech, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and 2 Chinese pharmaceutical companies. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen and members of a European Parliament delegation have agreed to strengthen ties to counter disinformation and cyber attacks originating in China and elsewhere. The 7-member team is the first official delegation dispatched by the European Parliament to Taiwan. Its members belong to a special committee that handles foreign interference in domestic processes such as elections and shaping public opinion in the EU and its member states.
Taiwan is willing to share how it combats disinformation with our European friends. This will deepen our partnership and help safeguard our free and democratic way of life.
And we came here with a very simple, very clear message. You are not alone. Europe is standing with you, by you, in the defense of freedom and the defense of rule of law and human dignity.
The head of the team added Taiwan has built a democracy despite facing enormous threats and pressure. He says the EU is now confronted with similar threats from authoritarian regimes. The delegation is scheduled to meet Taiwan's digital minister before wrapping up their 3-day visit on Friday. Now, the United States is also keeping a close eye on Chinese pressure campaigns, including military movements. But the U.S.'s top general says it's unlikely the country will attempt to seize Taiwan, at least in the next couple of years.
Based on my analysis of China, I don't think that it is likely in the next near future being defined as 6, 12, maybe 24 months, that kind of window. Having said that, though, the Chinese are clearly and unambiguously building the capability to provide those options to the national leadership if they so choose at some point in the future.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was addressing a security forum in Washington, D.C. General Milley said U.S. forces absolutely have the capability to defend Taiwan, but he noted it's up to the president to decide whether to actually intervene. Next, immediately after the atomic bombing of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, rain containing radioactive materials fell on the area. But many of the people the rain affected were not recognized as A-bomb survivors or hibakusha because they were outside a government-designated zone. NHK World's Ishida Motoshi has a story of a victim of the so-called Black Rain and her struggle to be recognized.
81-year-old Ogawa Yasuko was just 4 when the black rain hit our village.
A mushroom cloud rose up a little to the left of the top of that mountain. I remember the rain came down so hard that my body was stained black, but not completely black. The color was like melted charcoal.
Ogawa soon began to suffer from diarrhea. She also developed tumors in her legs and lymphoma in both of her armpits.
I had big boils stuck to my socks. It was so painful. I couldn't sit still.
Her agony did not end there. After the age of 50, she developed liver cirrhosis. Ogawa applied for an A-bomb survivor's health certificate. Her wish is to have the government recognize the health damage caused by the black rain. However, it was not approved because at the time of the bombing, she lived outside a government-designated zone. This gave Ogawa the resolve to fight. She organized a residence group and surveyed the symptoms of people around her.
As the years went by, the number of people who got cancer increased. It's getting beyond strange. Is there any other place with symptoms like this?
She repeatedly asked the government to expand the relief area based on the results of her survey. Still, the government kept rejecting her request, claiming there was no scientific basis for it. In 2015, some of Ogawa's colleagues filed a lawsuit to be recognized as hibakusha. She did not participate in the trial due to her deteriorating health. In July, the Hiroshima High Court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, and the government finally announced that it would recognize the plaintiffs as atomic bomb victims and consider expanding this to other people exposed to the black rain. In October, Ogawa visited a venue where people can make application for recognition as hibakusha.
I came to the garden when something was falling with rain. I remember it clearly.
But there is no guarantee that she will be issued a certificate because she did not participate in the trial, and the government has not yet disclosed the details of its decision.
This is the last time, my long-cherished wish. I want a testimony to show I have been fighting for this. I want to hold the hibakusha certificate in my hands, even if it's just a few years before I die.
76 years have passed since the atomic bombing. Yet the black rain still torments Ogawa and the people of Hiroshima. Ishida Matoshi, NHK World.
People here in Japan are buying fewer CDs these days. That's largely because they're getting more music online. But companies in the industry say demand for vinyl records is soaring. Officials at the Recording Industry Association of Japan say record production has grown 12-fold in 10 years. They say the value of record production fell to about $1.5 million in 2010, but it picked up to about $18.6 million last year. That's partly because more and more artists are releasing new music on vinyl.
Record covers are big, so they look good on display at home.
Especially at a time like this, it's worth a bit of hassle to enjoy music.
3 years ago, a company in the Sony Group restarted vinyl record production after a gap of 29 years. Orders have doubled since last year. A company representative says the factory is running around the clock. And another record manufacturer is also operating at full capacity. A company representative said the time they need to fill orders has grown from 1 month to as many as 4. Shifting now to the weather, a good portion of Europe is set to deal with unstable conditions with heavy rain and storms as we head toward the weekend. Our meteorologist Jonathan Oh explains the situation in our World Weather Report.
Hello, we have been monitoring a couple layers of low pressure that has been impacting the central and southern areas of Europe. It is now moving slowly toward the east, and high pressure is now starting to develop back toward the west. And that's going to eventually push those systems toward the east, and we should be seeing some clearing skies over in the western areas of the continent. We do have that northerly flow coming in, and so that's going to keep things relatively on the cooler side as we go forward in time for Friday. I mean, a high of only 10 in Paris coming up. Showers from Berlin over into Kyiv and Moscow as we see that low lifting toward the north and east. Meanwhile, we continue to monitor a system down toward the southern areas of the United States as it moves toward the east, bringing that unstable weather down into the southeastern portions of the country. Another area of low pressure moving into the Pacific Northwest, bringing windy weather and also rainy weather. Maybe talking about some snow into the higher elevations. Vancouver at 10 on Friday, 11 in Seattle, Winnipeg at 9. We've been looking at that wedge formation with the cold air damming along the eastern side of the United States. It should start to eventually break free slowly as we head toward the weekend. D.C. looking at a high of 12 with sunny skies. Across East Asia, we do have a disturbance on the south end of this high, and that's going to continue to bring clouds into the eastern areas of China, with the stationary front also developing down into the region. Northern areas of Japan earlier this week, dealing with some rain and some strong winds, and that continued into today on Thursday. Now we have this low pushing out, and we should be seeing things starting to calm down. Tokyo looking at sunny skies with a high of 21 on Friday, 19 in Seoul, but looking at some showers into Beijing and Shanghai. Cold air really pulling in. I mean, over into Mongolia, you're not getting out of freezing point with seeing snow as we go into Friday. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.